Just going to give it another 5 seconds just for the lag. Okay, well, welcome back. Welcome everyone. We're back. Snack and Chat is back after our mini vacation. Happy to be back, but I'm also kind of surprised that it's August 31st. Not quite sure how time managed to pass so quickly. We hope that you've all been doing well these past few weeks. So we're back to explore a very, very popular topic this time of year, transitioning back to school. For those of you that are new to the page, my name is Chantel, Community Engagement Liaison with Adopt for Life. I am going to be monitoring the chat, posting links and maybe some key takeaways as we discuss this very important topic today. I'm here with Tracy Moisan. She's going to be our host, and our guest, Tanice, talking all things back to school. So whether you're here live, maybe you're watching this later on replay, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we're open to, if you want to ask your questions live, or you can even put within the comments if you're watching this later, and we always make sure to do our best to make sure that those questions are answered. I will take this opportunity to remind you, as it's been a few weeks, that this is a live stream on our public Facebook page. So any information that you're including in your question or your comment, you do want to make sure or be mindful that you're not sharing any identifiable information, names, health information, just things that you don't really want to share in the general worldwide web, public domain. But with that in mind, we love hearing from you, and we hope that you find this discussion informative and engaging. I'm just going to take another minute to just introduce Tanice. Tanice was on a Snack and Chat with us a few weeks ago, but I want to just take a moment to introduce her again. Tanice is a mother of one with a vested interest in adoption, kinship, and customary care that stems from being raised in a home that fostered children. Professionally, Tanice is a registered early childhood educator that has over 16 years of nonprofit operational and leadership experience in a family-oriented environment. She has specialized training in mental health, trauma-informed care, and inclusion. She has enjoyed a variety of positions, including working directly with children and families to ensure their needs are being met by providing individual and group support, assessments, as well as referrals to community agencies. Tanice has played an instrumental role in community initiatives that have brought awareness to racial inequities. Her work with local school boards, child care centers, and special needs resources agencies have included advocacy, education, and outreach endeavors using an anti-racism and anti-oppression framework. She currently works as an addiction and mental health instructor and is committed to supporting children and families to self-advocate with an emphasis on self-care. So thanks so much, Tanice, for taking time out of your busy day, and I'm sure a busy week, to be with us on Snack and Chat. We really appreciate it. I felt a little rusty, but I got through it. I'm going to pass things over to Tracy, and we'll get started.
I thought that was great. We were just saying before.
Absolutely. I'm like, wow, thank you.
You should get her to record that bio, Tanice.
I know.
It's a beautiful bio. I love it.
Tanice, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
For anybody who doesn't know, or who, as Chantel said, may be new to the page, I drop in periodically to host Snack and Chat as part of our community engagement team. So I'm thrilled to be here today and excited that Snack and Chat is back after our short month-long break. As Chantel said, I think the biggest thing we are hearing from our community right now in our parent-to-parent network is, oh my gosh, school is back next week. And we're either ready or not ready, or our kids are ready or not ready. And yet we were saying just before we went live, somehow it all seems to work. And we can remember to breathe. We have tons and tons of questions from our community that we're going to cover today. And we'll keep an eye too on the live feed for any questions that are coming up in real time. Tanice, I'm going to go through the questions that came in from our parents, but I feel like a bunch of these could have come from me.
All right.
Why don't we go ahead and dive in? And, I think we all know that a lot of kids across Ontario are going back to school, some in person, many are still going to be virtual or some type of blended approach. Last year was certainly a school year like no other. And so a lot of questions coming up for parents about how to support those transitions. So the first question we had is, and this one definitely could have come from me, my kids do better with routine and structure and predictability. And certainly last year, we saw a lot of disruption with schools opening, closing, learning modes changing. And that directly impacted kids' behavior. This parent is asking, what can I do to help my kids understand what's happening and also to accept some of the changes, be able to better flow with or accept some changes?
Okay, so routine is important, and how do you keep routine when you don't know what the future holds? So some strategies that will work is having a backup plan. So whether you are in person, whether you are blended, whether you are all virtual, there may be some alterations or pauses in our education and what that normally looks like. So we're going to plan for our ideal, what we're hoping for the way if you want it to be in person and you're hoping for a year of in person. You're going to plan. You're going to talk about, okay, what are some complications we may encounter if we're not in person? So you're going to have your routine as it ideally should be, but also have a routine as that backup. So if you're in person and there is an interruption and you are going to revert back to being virtual or having some type of blended, you want to anticipate those problems or those interruptions in routine in advance. You can pull from what worked last year, what didn't work, what do we need to work on moving forward, but anticipating that our routine may change and that may not be in our control.
That's great advice. It's and like you said, so much of it is fluid and is not in our control. The next question kind of relates to that. And this parent says, last school year, my daughter attended school virtually. This year, she's excited to go back to school in person. But when we were talking about school recently, I saw some signs of anxiety, and I'm thinking that she may be experiencing a period of separation anxiety. How can I best support her, and are there ways to involve her teacher?
Okay, so definitely involving the teacher. I'll start with ways to support. So validating those feelings of anxiety. So your child may be having feelings of anxiety, you may as well. Talk about and problem solve through those common things. As a parent, I know, my daughter has allergies. So will they be calling me because they think it's a symptom of something else? So talking through how to handle that. Am I discussing that with the teacher in advance? This is part of her allergies and this isn't concerning. Along with validating those feelings, it's okay to be anxious. To deal with those anxieties, make sure those basic needs are met. For myself personally, when I'm really anxious, I won't eat. So those little things, having breakfast in the morning, having a snack, fueling your body to help you deal with the anxiety. Encourage discussion around it. What are you anxious about? What are you concerned about? Also having opportunities to share what you're anxious about and concerned about with your child going back to school or with yourself going back to work if you are transitioning as well from remote to in-person or any type of differences. Set the tone. So if you're anxious, they're going to be anxious. So though you're talking about what your anxieties are, flip it in the positive. So you're anxious because I have to wear a mask all day at school, but you're happy about I get to interact with my friends and see my friends. I'm not on a screen all day. I don't have to deal with my internet going out or my sibling doing this. So talk about the positives as well as the negatives to help deal with those anxieties and problem solve through those. Model confidence. Particularly when you're dealing with transition, anxiety, and dealing with the unknown. With school and back to school in September, we try to be as prepared as we can, but It is, if school hasn't started for you, it's starting shortly, and you may not have all that necessary information. Maybe concerned about, busing, and I don't know who my bus driver is. Will it be the same person? My classroom teacher, I don't know if my friends will be in my class. So having those conversations to try to reduce the anxiety, even if you don't have the concrete answers in that moment.
Yeah, I feel like you just channeled every conversation with my kids in the last 2 weeks. But you're right, so much of it really is, I think, about naming it and helping our kids process that in a way that lets us be a little bit anxious, but also projects that sense of confidence and coping skills for them. I love that advice. This next question's a little bit different. Again, we've parents within our parent-to-parent community are parenting kids of all different kind of ages. And this mom says, my son is starting his first year of high school. And honestly, this question is more about me. I worry about all the social pressure, peer pressure, the decisions that he will have to make. Any suggestions for how this worried mama can adjust?
All right, so when you're thinking of the transition for high school for that individual student, it's a status change, right? So you're going from being at the top of your school system to now starting at the beginning. So what is helpful is having those social supports. So that friend system, make sure they're talking to their friends, be excited about this transition, but anticipate things that may come up. For the parent, communication is key. Again, like dealing with separation anxiety or any type of anxiety, what are you excited about for high school? What are you concerned or worried about? All of those conversations aren't just happening, back to school in September, but ongoing, right? Who are your friends? Who are your social supports? High school is an excellent opportunity to join sports teams and clubs. And we know all of these things are protective factors when they're involved and they are engaged. Communication. So finding out information not only about your child, but about your child's friends, about their teachers, what's happening and what their school day looks like. If you're starting those communication pieces on a positive note, they're more likely to communicate things that come up that may not be so positive. So having that open line of communication. As a parent and mom, to relax those anxieties. If you were doing those key things, communicating, talking about your own personal experience with high school and what your concerns were, and comparing their concerns. Having those conversations normalizes the experience. Like, okay, it's okay to be afraid. I joked with my friend's daughter because she's going to high school and she's kind of concerned. And I said, my concern on my first day was that combination lock I couldn't open and I practiced no matter what. I'm like, I'm never going to get into my locker. So it could be simple things and it could be larger things, but having those conversations and those shared experiences.
It's a great one. And like you said, some of those are those little things that, like the lock, that really are big. I was thinking as you were talking too, that I think for a lot of kids starting high school, especially, the dynamics around social media change. Mm-hmm. And how to manage social media. And that could take us a whole other episode of Snack and Chat. But I think that's a big one too that parents worry about is how to help their kids make safe and smart decisions on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Huge concern, right? Looks totally different from when I was a child. So little things on social media. Who are you adding? Who are you not adding just because you're in high school? Are you adding everyone that you meet? Are you not? What is the importance of, the different platforms that you have and having those conversations with children? Does it matter how many likes you have? Does it matter how many friends you have? And it may matter to them, but knowing where they stand is important because it'll help you with how to problem solve through other concerns or issues that may come up.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. The next question from a parent is a parent of a child with an IEP, an individual education plan. And that person says, we recently moved, and so my daughter is starting at a new school and a new school board. He has an IEP. Should I be reaching out to his teachers or principal, or will they already know and be getting in touch with me?
All right, so always recommend reaching out. So information does transfer. IEP is a living document. So if you're looking at that IEP of your child from last year, what are those changes that happened over the course of the year? Advancements, regressions. There are so many things that need to be addressed. Always ideal, your IEP, you're reviewing it prior to sitting with the principal and the teacher, and you're looking at things that may not apply or didn't translate well in the previous school year. Looking at things that your child has grown in strengths and making sure that those strengths are focused on for that child. Things that you know aren't effective, things that are triggers for your child. Sharing that information with your classroom teacher, with the principal. I always say with any individuals that are a part of that child's day, if they could be involved, I definitely strongly suggest this should happen before the child is in that classroom. It won't happen in person, more than likely. It will be virtual, but having those opportunities, if you have the opportunity for what you were sharing about your child reflective to their IEP, things that work well for them, if you can be recorded because it is virtual and it is shared with anyone interacting with your child, supply teachers that are in the classroom, support staff if they can't attend the meeting, because sometimes there are time restraints and you can't get everyone there, but you want everyone who is involved in your child's life to be well informed. So definitely suggest setting that meeting up. It doesn't always come from the school as their initiative to set it up right in September. September is a busy time for all of them. So sometimes you do have to take that initiative. It will happen, but sometimes you have to take that proactive step.
One of the things we've learned along the way with my two younger children was being really proactive about who we wanted to see at those IEP meetings. And like you said, sometimes the scheduling doesn't work for it. But I think the most effective ones that we've had have been when we're able to say we want not just the classroom teacher, but the learning resource teacher or an educational assistant or anyone who's part of our child's core support team to be at that IEP meeting for those discussions. And it really just leads to so much more of a helpful and effective conversation.
And using the fact that we are virtual and we can have individuals on a screen. So an opportunity for your child to meet those individuals in advance where previously you may not have had that opportunity will help reduce your child's anxiety. They have a face, they know they're safe, they know that this individual is well informed and knows about them. That is definitely helpful.
Yeah, good point. So the next question, I think we all like to think that our kids have kept up with all of their studies and homework and learning over the last year, even with all the disruptions. But this parent says, my son used to love to read, but I don't think he's picked up a book in months. Much more video games. How can I support increasing literacy at home?
Okay, so literacy is not only reading. It sounds like that would be middle school age child or a bit older. So to increase literacy at home, if it's video games that they're in, try to get a book. So they have these amazing books. I know I picked up one randomly in a dollar store and it was Fortnite, and it was stats and information about Fortnites and the creation of different games and the creation of different dances, and it gave you the history. So getting books that they're interested in is key. I know for me, I would get my daughter a lot of books that I was interested in because I read them as a child. I'm like, you're going to read Babysitter Club and you're going to read these, and they just sat. So just because you loved it didn't mean they will love it, but find a book that they're interested in. Doing games and activities that increase literacy. So what we do here at home is we play categories. If you're familiar with the game. Yep. So essentially you have a letter and there's different things you have to come up with the letter, but they are writing, they are going over different words. We play name games in the car all of the time. Sometimes I will look up obscure random words and say, do you know what this means? And we guess meanings and we laugh about it. So incorporating literacy in other ways, but if you are introducing literacy, it shouldn't be forced. It should be something they love to read, something they would flourish from.
That's awesome. We do a lot of focus with my youngest on more functional reading skills and it's every kind of games we can play in the car, even of navigating on a certain trip and which way do we go and reading street signs and all those ways to kind of build that in, that he doesn't know we're practicing reading. He thinks he's in charge of where we're going and he loves that.
No, absolutely. For younger, like those rhyming words, say a word and come up with all the words that you can rhyme with. You can do it anywhere, right? Yeah, absolutely.
My kids prefer to read like comics and graphic novels, and I'm good. They're reading something, and then that's for them to, create their own characters and draw and write and create little comics, and so I think that's one of the keys is yeah, because I think we all do that. We're like, well, I love this as a child, so you will love this too, But yeah, like what are they interested in? And finding that niche will sometimes spur them to, learn more, and read more.
Yeah.
Chantel, it's funny you said that because my babysitter club books that I thought she would love, she reads the graphic versions of them that have very few words. And she's like, do you know, and they're all the characters are the same so we can relate and we have those conversations. But I'm like, I still have my books here.
I was a huge reader as a kid, and you're right, it's so disappointing. You want your kids to read this book that you loved, and yet it's not something that they're interested in. And so really having to separate out the fact that I loved it from what is she interested in. Yeah. Next question is coming from a parent in our community, and I know this is a conversation that we have inside of our communities a lot, of how much information about our child's history to share, how much to share about family dynamics, and that could be around your child's adoption history, it could be around relationships with family members. But the question is really how, as I'm getting into the new school year, what's the right amount to share about family dynamics, and when's the best time to do that? Do I reach out and set up a meeting with the teacher? Do I wait as the school year progresses? So, do you have any advice for parents who are trying to navigate those conversations?
Okay, yeah, I definitely have a whole lot of advice in regards to that. So first I will kind of like piece it together. In regards to your family dynamics and your child, those conversations are happening before they're starting school, before you have conversations with the teacher. What do they want individuals to know about their story? So there are things that they will keep private, not secret, private, that they may not want to share. So you are going to decide with your child what you want them to know about your family dynamics, about their story. And you're going to honor that from your child, the information that they are comfortable with you sharing. Knowing that this information, there may be additional information that they're comfortable with sharing as they grow older, but you're going to meet them in that moment. Just like any information that you're sharing with a child, you're sharing with the child when it's developmentally appropriate. So that's kind of how their story is going to unfold. In regards to teachers, this is hard and sensitive. So you're only sharing the information that you've discussed previously with your child that you said you've shared with this teacher. If there is additional information that your child would like to share, they always have that option to share that information. There's information that they may want to keep private. When you are having that discussion with the teacher, ideally, it would be good if your child is present for that discussion. So it's just reinforcing, I'm sharing everything that we discussed. You are a part of the story. You can share it. I can share it. Allow those choices with separate conversations that you may have with the teacher. That teacher needs to be a support for that child. So there may be questions that come up in school that has to be addressed. That teacher needs to be that resource. And then for that child, they don't have to tell or share their story with anyone. They have the choice to walk away. They have the choice to share. They have the choice to educate about their story and about their family dynamics, but they need to be given that responsibility to share. The teacher's role and responsibility in that is reinforcing. If they're not comfortable with sharing, if there's questions that come up that they're not comfortable with, helping that child advocate for themselves and making sure that you're sending that clear message that we have stories that are private and stories that we're willing to share. So to summarize, yes, you're having that conversation with the teacher in advance. hopefully your child can be part of that conversation. You would have previously modeled having that conversation outside of school with individuals that you may have met in the community. So there is some practice there, but in the school system, they're alone. They don't have the protection of you. So you want to create that positive, protective environment at school as well.
Yeah. I love that suggestion too of making sure you've modeled those conversations in other settings, because I think sometimes we expect our kids to know how to have those conversations, but in reality it's seeing it happen other places so that they can build that skill, the skill of how to feel that sense of agency over their story and how they want to tell it and when and to who. Yeah. We've got a couple, I'm always amazed how fast this goes. So we've still got about 15 minutes. We've still got a few questions that have come in from parents. Chantel, just a quick check. Is there anything from the comments or any live questions that we should cover?
No, I mean, I think people are just absorbing all of this information, and if you want to expand on the discussion, or if you're watching and want to ask a question live, please feel free. But for now, everyone, I think it's just absorbing all the information, because Tanice is full of amazing knowledge.
Yeah, they're fantastic strategies, Tanice. Thank you. We'll keep going then with some of the questions that were pre-submitted. Next one is related again to COVID and some of the transitions around COVID and what that means in a school context. And this parent says, last year masks weren't required for my child's age group. And this year in our school board, masks will be mandatory for their grade and all grades. Any suggestions on how to prepare my child to wear a mask all day without instilling a sense of fear or anxiety?
All right. So first and foremost, we're wearing masks to keep each other safe. So I think it's all in the wording too. Don't word it as you have to wear a mask all day. So if they're younger children, particularly, you have to wear a mask until recess. And then you have that break from your mask. Preparing them for getting ready for wearing a mask throughout their school day, do it at home. Highly suggest doing it at home. So if you know they're going to be wearing a mask for an hour and 55 minutes in the morning, you're going to practice that in your morning routine. And do it with them, because modeling is important. We all have to wear masks. It is a part of our world right now. Yep. So modeling it. So your child's doing it, everyone in the home's doing it for that hour and 55 minutes before recess. And then you have your break and you get to take off your mask. But for me, I know at the beginning, now it's just part of me, but at the beginning I had a really, really hard time wearing a mask. If your child wears glasses, you're going to want to problem solve through that. At home, they have the choice, or if they're out, they have the choice to take it off. But how are they dealing with that at school, right? So have that conversation with the teacher. Is there a safe place where my daughter or son can take off their mask and, fix their glasses and do that? So it's not like so-and-so has their mask up. So deal with things that they may encounter. Something that worked for me is that anti-fog spray. I got it from my eye doctor.
Yeah,
it absolutely works. So do the anti-fog spray on your glasses with your mask and you won't fog up. I didn't know that in the beginning. It was trial and error.
I was waiting for you to finish and was like, I am a person with glasses. I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. So masks aren't anything to be afraid of. They're something that keeps us safe. And sometimes it is irritating to wear them all the time, be honest with it. But we'll practice and we'll get through it. Some won't need the practice and can keep it on. You know your child, you know what will work best for them.
Awesome. I'll also say too, like not every mask is equal. Like sometimes you have to try different styles, different like for comfort, and that really helps too, right?
That made a big difference at our house. My youngest has a number of complex sensory needs, and we actually found that the cloth reusable masks are really irritating to him. And so in his case, the disposable single-use masks actually were much more workable for him. And so, we've made that adjustment for him for school because it's just more comfortable. But you're right, it was a little bit of trial and error.
Mm-hmm. Another thing with wearing a mask throughout the day may get soiled or wet. So maybe they have masks for different transitions. So at lunchtime, I'm wearing this one till lunchtime, and then I have a new mask to deal with irritations or, anything that may have happened.
Yeah. And the next question is kind of related to some of the gaps and disruptions that I think so many of our kids experienced last year. And the question was asked around, how do I help ensure my child isn't falling behind? I think I want to pivot the question a little bit, just because I think there's a pressure inherently that we're putting on a lot of kids, this sense of, oh, our kids are behind. So maybe reframing it a little bit to, how do we help our kids kind of adjust where they are? How do we help their teachers figure out where they're at? And how do we support, rebuilding or reinstituting some of those learning behaviors that are helping them grow academically without creating this pressure of feeling like they're quote unquote behind?
Okay. I think the best way to explain it is, for us, we put grade levels that match ages, but there's always an overlap in the learning. So in grade 2 and grade 3, you're going to have an overlap in the learning. You're going to learn some new stuff, but there's always an overlap. So that happens through all of the grades. So you're not behind. There are certain things, certain areas that may not have translated virtually for you, but you'll still catch that in the current grade that you're in, because everything is touched on again, repeated again. So thinking that our children are behind, or, they checked out halfway through the virtual and they couldn't do it, and now that's not how our system works. As an educator, we have the job in September to assess our class and where they are and what our learning goals are for the class. We have milestones or areas that we have to make sure that we have completed by the end of the year, but we have that whole entire year to work through them. So looking at it individually, looking at it as a group, we're working together to make sure that we're where we're supposed to be. You can't necessarily look at it as they're behind and they've missed so much work. Their teachers, their educators in their classroom will support them through their learning, will support them, and they'll be exactly where they need to be.
Thank you for that. I think I hear this from other parents, and I think we often need to kind of adjust our own expectations and remember that they're exactly where they are right now, and that's okay. And they're exactly where they need to be to move forward.
I think there was a second piece to that question. If you look at the Ontario curriculum, it gives you an idea for each grade, what they're learning and what they're going over. If you have concerns and you want to take a look at that, you can incorporate that at home. I wouldn't say incorporate it as a lesson. I would say incorporate it in your daily activities of what you're doing. So if you're cooking, have them help you cook that day. Intentionally have them do fractions. Don't have them measuring if it's 1 cup. Just be like, oh, I only have a 1/4 cup. Can you make this work? I need 1 cup. So those intentional learning opportunities that are part of their daily routine, when you make it focused on, okay, you are behind, I need to get you caught up, you totally missed all of those fractions and I don't know how you're gonna ever get this and everyone's gonna be here and you're there. Try to incorporate those things in your daily activities. I say cooking because I love to cook, and cooking is always an easy way to incorporate literacy and incorporate math. So like in a recipe.
Yeah, problem solving, substitutions. How do you work around things? You're right, there's so much opportunity there.
Yep.
Good. We're getting down to our final set of questions. So this parent says, I'm a single parent to a child with a learning disability, and I'm often overwhelmed with the level of advocacy that's needed within our school and our school board. Do you have any suggestions that can help?
Yes, so I'm a single parent as well. So it is hard. So what you want to do is build your community. So initially, it is you. It is you educating the educators, the principal, anyone that is interacting with your child. Ideally, the individuals that are helping you advocate, so the teacher that had her last year, or the EA that may have worked with her previously. They are now a part of that advocacy and support team for you. So you're not on your own. If you have an individual that is new to a school, that's when you're starting to build that. And there is a lot of work at the beginning. But as your child progresses through the school, those supports are built with anyone that has interacted with that child. So it's not as cumbersome on you as you progress, as your community and your village helping you with this child grows.
It's probably also a good opportunity to remind people who are watching that if you're part of the parent-to-parent support network, we have a dedicated closed group for single parents. And to your point about building your community and relying on other parents, there's a whole community of single parents who you can also rely on for tips and suggestions and strategies and other resources too.
Absolutely.
I did get a question live. Do we have time?
Sure.
Okay. So this parent asked for some suggestions about how to share information about the child with the classmates. So in this instant, the child wears leg braces and has to also wear a helmet outdoors. And so this obviously brings up a lot of questions and comments from the other children. So any suggestions that you would have for this person on what to disclose? Obviously it's all, age related but they're just not sure on where does that go from child to child? Does it trickle down from the teacher? Is it a joint effort? So any suggestions?
All right.
I know we're catching you live, so I'm not,
Yeah, no, not a problem. So I would have that conversation with the teacher and what your options are that are available for this child. With any child, anyone. This is something new to many of the children in the classroom. So having that open conversation and that dialogue, right? So talking about the helmet and what it does, it's a protective piece. You may wear a helmet when you're riding a bike. Why do you wear that helmet while you're riding a bike? And then talk about your child and why they are wearing a helmet beyond riding that bike. So have that conversation and opportunities for those conversations in the classroom. I always suggest the child being present. This is something that you definitely set up with a teacher. Sometimes it happens collectively as a class. Sometimes it happens in small groups of the class. Sometimes your child may have a close friend or a best friend who wants to talk about it because they played with them all summer. They know about everything. That child having that peer support. So definitely addressing that with the class. The child being involved in that discussion, having the child have a support person, that is not the parent. And the reason why that support person is not the parent can be there because that parent is not there during the school day. So outside of your teacher is there to support you. Do you have a peer in that class that can support you? So definitely would recommend. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tanice.
No problem.
She takes questions live.
On the fly.
And I can say, I always love, the students were very receptive when, we had a child in a wheelchair, right? And all of those questions, because this may be the first interaction they've ever seen in a wheelchair, right? So the question, does it go on its own? Do you have to push it? Is it, and safety things, can it go on the road? And those conversations make the individual that has that device more comfortable, and they don't have to fuel that conversation on their own.
Yeah. We had a really fantastic teacher for one of my kids at one point where, we were looking for ways to have a conversation in the classroom about mental health supports and about neurodevelopmental differences. And I so appreciated, and I thought it was so well done, that she really approached it from a whole classroom conversation, not about any individual child, but really having a conversation with her whole class about how kids' brains work and how kids' brains all work differently, how people's brains all work differently, and talking about those differences being strengths and the different strengths that people brought to the classroom, and how as a group all their strengths together made the classroom stronger. And it was so beautifully handled and so respectfully handled. And I thought there's something there about how do we do this that's not about any one child, but really flip it to the differences and celebrating the differences and strengths between all of us.
Absolutely.
So I
Sure.
think we're just about at the top of the hour. Chantel, anything else live that we should cover?
No, I just will share that that person that asked that question just is extending her thanks for
Awesome.
your
No
answer.
problem.
Much appreciated.
Well then,
Um,
Tanice, before we wrap up, we like to, at the end of Snack and Chat, give all of our guests the opportunity to share anything you'd like, touch on anything that you think we might have missed or that you want to make sure we cover. So is there anything important, either professionally or personally as your own experience, that you want to share, or any questions you have for any of us?
Okay, so it's probably larger than to talk about in the few minutes that we have, but I did want to touch on, since it is back to school, I did want to touch on, if you are sharing your family dynamics and your story with that teacher, and that is in turn shared with others, I think be mindful when educators are trying to be inclusive and have adoption books and positive stuff in their curriculum, that they don't have triggering items. A lot of the adoption stories are tragic, right? So having that conversation, though they're coming from a great place and they want to be inclusive and their books are inclusive, watching for those tragic adoption stories. So if you need recommendations, your parent liaison can send you recommendations for great books that can be included in a classroom, as well as touching on triggering curriculum. So birthdays, family trees, and all of that. September is the time to touch on it and have that conversation with those classroom teachers. Have those conversations be behind why it is triggering, alternate activities that are more inclusive with triggering curriculum. Yeah. So
I'm so glad you raised that, because this we always see this conversation come up early in the school year of assignments that parents are so shocked when their kids come home with. And I've been there myself as a parent, where I think, what on earth was someone thinking? So really, like you said, thinking about through that, being proactive. I love the idea of seeking out our regional parent liaisons for some advice and suggestions and recommendations. That's awesome.
And one more thing I wanted to add to that advocacy piece, if you know that you have all of this work to do and you don't want to go it alone, reach out to your parent liaison. If you are having a meeting with a school teacher and you need that support person, we are here for you. You'll be doing all the work, but we are the support. We will help you draft whatever you need to draft, but you don't have to go it alone. Any family.
Absolutely. It's such a reminder. The whole tenet of our community is we're all stronger together. And that's a perfect example.
100%. That's a great reminder, Tanice. Thanks.
Chantel, any wrap up, any preview of what's coming next week now that we're back?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening. So tomorrow is September 1st, which I mean, it's September. It also means it's the beginning of our month-long awareness camp, FASD awareness campaign. You probably will be receiving the newsletter soon, and it will be chock full of everything that we're doing. There's going to be amazing opportunities for the community to connect, share, learn. We have a full webinar series that Nancy Lockwood is presenting, and I think it starts this Thursday, specifically aimed at educators. So if you if you're already in touch with your teacher, you might want to forward them the information on that, because it's going to be a really great opportunity for them to learn. And so go make sure that you like our public Facebook page, because we do post a lot of the information there on what's going to be happening all month long. Next week, our guest is going to be Miranda Myers, and we're going to be talking specifically about the book, FASD and Me and My Community. And we're going to explore what a great resource this is for young people, their families, and their support network. So if you haven't heard about the book yet, I mean, okay, I'll give you that. But whether you heard about it or not, come and join us. And you'll join the discussion, and we can take your questions live, as always. I'm sure there's a lot more going on, but I don't want to keep everyone past the time. So like I said, just check the Facebook page, check the website, and you'll be up to date on everything that's happening. I do want to take a little extra time to really thank Tanice.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate your time, your expertise, your knowledge, and sharing all that with us and with our community. It is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tanice. This was fantastic and really, really good suggestions for families.
Yeah. Especially on a topic that can be so broad, right? In terms of like age groups and school boards. And so you're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tracy, for hosting today. Really appreciate that. And appreciate your time as well. All right, everyone, have a great afternoon. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.